All right, good evening, ladies. Yes, Danielle, there is no one else like you. I just absolutely love that song, and I am so happy to be starting with a little Joshua Aaron. Well, as you can tell, tonight is looking a little different. Hang on one second here. I'm going to pin one more person who's going to be chatting with us tonight. All right, so we've got, maybe I can only pin two people. Let's see. I've got to pin Tish. So we're going to try to do something a little bit more different tonight. Oh, you know what? I'm only going to be able to pin two at a time. So we're going to have to just go with that for a minute for some reason. Hey, Katrina, if you know how to pin more than two people, if you would do that, that would be great. So welcome, everybody. Hey, Marcia, unmute. Let's hear your volume.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Yay. So I couldn't hear you before.
I don't know. I had to switch it to my phone because I don't know what was wrong. So
okay, well, that's all right. We can hear you good now. And Tish, it kind of looks like you're pinned, but I don't see you large on the screen. But can you just say hi to everybody?
Hi, ladies.
So we tonight, Jen is not Jen and Robin. Robin lost her voice yesterday, and so she is unable to join us tonight. I think she might be on. She might be watching on Facebook. But please keep her in your prayers. You know, her and I were chatting this morning, and we just believe it's a spiritual attack. That woman is on fire for the Holy One, and she is talking so much to so many people, and she is teaching creation gospel, and she is witnessing to family and doing all of this. And she's lost her voice, and we're like, no, you haven't. Like, we are just going to pray against that you have not actually lost your voice. So anyway, I was kind of hanging out this morning, and I had messaged Tish, and I'm like, you know what, I just feel like maybe you're supposed to be doing this. And so I called her, and we were chatting, and she kind of confirmed that, you know, she was had a dream a couple nights ago, and we'll let her share that a little bit. And then I just this afternoon felt led to ask Marcia. So I don't know what the Father's going to bring tonight. And we never really know for certain. We know what the Torah portion is about, but we know that he always has intention for our meetings. And if you're new, you know, we're here not to say that we have any greater knowledge than anyone else or to feel like we are in some sort of higher position. We are so humbled.
yeah,
Right?
amen.
We are so humbled to think that the Father would ever use us for such a thing. But he knows us, and he knows our passion, and he knows that our greatest desire is to share with people what he's showing us and what he's taught us. So we're not here to feel like we are going to you know, give you some amazing insight that you just, you know, necessarily need to have. This is what we do when we show up for these calls every week. We show up and we pray, Father, let your will be done. Let your spirit rain down. Let your waters flood over every person who is listening now and on the live stream. That's what we do. That's who we are. And so as we start this portion, we literally don't know where this conversation is going to go, but we just always trust that he has a purpose and intention for our meeting, that he wants to be honored and glorified and lifted up. And we're not scholars, okay? So that's the other thing. We are not scholars. We are just everyday women who are seeking to understand more about his word, beginning to end, from Genesis 1:1 to the end of Revelation. And so our greatest desire is to just talk about what we feel like he's laid on our hearts this week, and what our downloads have been. That's a big word in the portion in the cafe, is what our downloads have been. And we want to take that, and we're going to share it with you like women sitting around a coffee table. And I'm excited to have Tish here. You know, Tish and I actually met months ago when I was more actively kind of employed with the Rooted Cafe. I've stepped back from that a little bit, but I know the first time I sat on the Zoom call with her, just one-on-one, I just fell in love with her, and I think she's wonderful. She's got a ton of great stories to share and a house full of kids, and she is a super busy mom and farm girl. I mean, this morning when I got her, she was outside. And if you don't know Marcia, and I'll let you guys both kind of introduce yourself a little bit because you are kind of new faces. And Marcia lives 40 minutes from me, but her and I met through the portion, and we did not know each other prior to this Facebook group. And so that has been instrumental for me because now I get to Shabbat with her and spend time with her. She knows my mother, and I mean, we're family. We're true sisters, and I feel that way about a lot of people in the portion. But I'm super grateful for this place where women can connect in this capacity because we don't always have safe spaces on social media, but we have a safe space. And so anyway, Marcia can share a little bit, but Tish, why don't you start and just share just 2 minutes quickly. How did you come to Torah? How did you get in the portion? And just some interesting facts about yourself.
Okay.
I didn't prep you for that either. So, I'm throwing
No, you did not.
Let the
Hi,
spirit lead.
everyone. Hi, ladies. I'm so glad you're here this evening with us. And like Jen had mentioned, she sent me a text message this morning, totally threw me for a loop, and asked if I could be on tonight. And she mentioned about a dream that I had a couple nights ago. I wasn't quite sure what it meant, and it was very odd, but in my dream, I had taken my blood sugar, and the number on my screen came up as 65. So I immediately thought that was really weird. And what does that mean? And went into a little bit of a study on that morning, and then reached out to our wonderful Valerie Moody. And it had to do with 60 being completion of flesh. Wow. 5 is grace, abundance, favor, redemption, and 5-fold ministry. So over the last couple of days, I've kind of went into prayer and asked the Lord to show me. And then I got a text message from Jen this morning. Valerie had mentioned about 60 is the number of the letter Samak, meaning support. 5 is the number of grace. So here I am this evening, and I'm just very humbled. I still can't believe I'm sitting here on the screen doing this, but so yes, this morning when Jen spoke to me, I was actually feeding. We have a very small farm here in Ohio, and yes, we have a ton of children, and most of them are adults. We have still 4 at home, and I came to Torah is how I didn't realize that's what it was at the time, back in 2019, and was just trying to line everything up as to what really was making sense and where I had been since being a little girl and coming to know Jesus at the age of 10, and then moving through my years. It was just an eye-opening experience in 2019 when things just didn't start to sit as calmly in my spirit, I guess, as you could say. And then I heard about the portion as a Facebook group, joined in, kind of peeked around the corners for a little while, and then decided this is where I need to be learning some things, and then stretching out in some uncomfortable places to just try and let the Lord speak to me. And I still do that every single day. As I mentioned to Jen this morning, I used to wake up and think, what do I have to do? I need to hurry up and get up before the kids, and I have to get out and feed, and I have to do this, this, and this. And what is the day looking like? And I don't do that now. I wake up and I give thanks. I give thanks for my eyes opening and for my breath, and just for the gifts and the provision that he provides for our family every single day, even in the midst of what the world says won't work. God shows us otherwise. And I think that's
I'm gonna pause you there because
yeah.
we are gonna go into that in detail later.
Yes.
So save some of that
Okay.
conversation.
Okay.
All right. Marcia,
Thanks.
can you give us just a snippet about who you are for people who don't recognize your name or face?
Hi, I'm Marcia, and I came in, well, I started pretty much in 2017, not knowing exactly the same what she said. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what it was called. I came into the understanding a little bit about what was different from the normal Christianity after a tragedy, lost my son. And I started studying Psalms 119 because I noticed that there was Hebrew letters. And so then when I started learning Hebrew, I was like, oh my gosh, like this, I just started tearing the scriptures apart by myself. And then 2019, I also had a dream, which was basically, I could not understand. And I mean, I did, but I didn't. It was basically about creation. And so I spent 2 years in Genesis 1, just tearing it apart and looking into the Hebrew. And then I started, reading things and understanding, oh, I'm supposed to keep Shabbat, but I didn't know what that looked like, but I still did it. I still set it apart. And even though I didn't know what it was supposed to be, I found the portion on Facebook. And then I found Halisa, who helped me understand what the creation dream was about. And I met so many wonderful people like Erica and Danielle and Jen and Robin. And we've just formed a really great family. Even though some of us are thousands of miles apart. But I have, I truly, I was just telling Danielle the other day that even though people are so far away, they're the closest friends I've ever had, the closest sisters I've ever had. I trust
Amen.
the ones
Yes.
that I have gathered around with my life and my deepest pains or struggling or whatever. I know that they'll be there for me and pray for me, and we just edify and uplift each other because we're all in this together. So that's pretty much me in a nutshell. Yeah, and I mean, I'm just learning on the journey with everyone else, and I'm
Yeah.
loving it.
And I think that that's it. We're all here. We're all in a different journey. We're all in different places. But the one commonality that we all have with each other is we all love his word. And so today we're going to get into the Torah portion called Ekev. And I'm just going to give us a little introduction and put a few things out there. And then we'll open it up for a little discussion with Marcia and Tish. But we are in, I think this is the 46th Torah portion. So we're nearing the end of our cycle as we get close to Rosh Hashanah. And we come into our fall feast season. This Torah portion, and actually, so just kind of quick, and I don't know if my mom is watching now or if she'll watch later. My mom is actually going to do Shabbat with me for the first time this weekend, and I'm super excited about that. But she had a funny comment last week, because if she doesn't catch these live, she always catches them later on Facebook. And she's like, I feel like they're just kind of repetitive. Like they just keep, saying the same thing over and over. And I'm like, you know what? That is Deuteronomy. Like when we talk about Deuteronomy tonight, we get into this Torah portion. We're not touching on things we didn't just go through in one of these other books. We're hitting on Exodus. We're hitting on Numbers. We are recapping. But here's the thing with the book of Deuteronomy. It is the retelling of all of the important words. And so we know that anytime the Father repeats himself, it's important. Anytime concepts are, spoken over and over and over again in scripture, there is an intention. There isn't a single word in this entire book that was put in there on accident that doesn't have meaning. And sometimes that's hard to grasp because we feel like we have to dig for all the important concepts, and there's a lot of words that don't have meaning. And if that's your philosophy, I'm just going to tell you right now, I disagree with you, because I think every word is intentional. But one of the things that we start with right here at the beginning of the Torah portion is there's a whole nother section of the Shema coming out. There's this retelling of what it means to hear and obey. And we just heard this back in Deuteronomy 6:5. But Ekev has a couple of different meanings. And one of the meanings is, I wrote it down, is like if or because. And we know that when the covenant was given at Sinai in Exodus chapter 19, the Father said, if you blah, 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 then blah, blah, blah. So the covenant is an if then covenant, which is something that most of Christianity will say is not true, because we don't have to do anything on our part because Messiah paid the penalty. And so now we're just over it. But we know that here again, it is an Ekev. It's because, or if you do A, then the consequence or the reward is B. So we're retelling in the beginning just a little bit of Exodus 19 about the covenant. And I just want to read it for you because it will set the stage for the entire conversation. So our Torah portion starts in Deuteronomy 7:12. And the very first verse is, and it shall be because, Ekev, because you hear these right rulings, and you shall guard, put a hedge around, protect, and do them, that Yah, your Elohim, shall guard you with the covenant and the loving commitment which he swore to your fathers. So right again in this Torah portion, we're starting out right out of the gate again with, remember, I have a part and you have a part. I am letting you hear these because not everyone is hearing this right now. We know this because we know that there are people who are rejecting the truth. But if you're on the portion and you're starting to walk in these ways, then he has chosen, not by any of your merit, not by any of your own righteousness, but by his righteousness, to say, if you keep my covenant, if you walk in my ways, you're going to receive blessing. Now, I was Marcia and I didn't have a chance to chat today and have any preface over that, but Tish and I were talking this morning that we have to think about our level of trust with the Father. And I tend to call him Yah because whether you use Yahuwah, Yahovah, Yahweh, we can all agree that Yah is the beginning of that. So when I say Yah, I'm not sold, I'm not a sacred name or anything like that. But I just am using that because I think it covers the basis of most of you in terms of what you felt led to give his personal name as. So, you know, Yah starts with this reiteration of if you obey, if you guard, if you protect, that means that the world is going to come at you and try to take these things from you. But if you protect and you guard them and do them, then I shall guard with you the covenant and the loving commitment which I swore to your fathers. So Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And shall love you, love, dependent there, and bless you and increase you. And then he goes on and he gives these 10 beautiful blessings. So what I want to just start and talk about is, I feel like the beginning of this chapter, it opens up and it's most of 7 and going into verse 8, like, listen, if you can hold on and be faithful with what I've asked you to do, there are so many blessings that are going to come your way. And, you know, Tish and I were talking about our kids this morning and how difficult it is sometimes to trust that the Father's going to do what he says he's going to do, because you look at your family or you look at your circumstances, and even if it's just for a moment, you forget who he is. And you may lack, and you may want to lack trust, and you may want to do things on your own or take control of the situation or have some sort of response that maybe isn't in line with your faith. And I think we can all speak to that because we all have those moments. So ladies, I feel like I'm kind of putting you on the spot, but you don't have to necessarily respond to this, but do you agree with this? Have you seen it in your own life? And what would you share with the ladies in terms of maybe a testimony? Anybody have anything? Tish, you have anything you want to share? I know with our children, as they get older, and Marcia and I have talked about this too, and you start to lose control, right? You start to, all of a sudden, you can't control, you know, what they eat, where they go, what they see with their eyes, who they date, different things. We struggle to feel secure. And last year, one of the things that the Father spoke to me this time last year around these Torah portions is, would you lay them at the altar for me? And I talked to Robin right after he gave me that revelation, and I was almost in tears because in my head, I'm like, I don't know. Like, I had to think about it. Like Abraham was willing to say, if I have to sacrifice everything to trust you, Father, I will. Now we know that he's a good father. And obviously we all know that Abraham did not have to sacrifice his firstborn son. But I think what the father was actually saying to me more specifically was, do you trust me enough that even if their life is in danger, you can rest assured that they were mine before they were yours, and I love them more than you do, so I've got them. Tish, you unmuted. Do you have something you want to add or say?
Yeah, that is one of the most difficult things I have found as a mother.
Mm-hmm.
To hand my children over, especially adult children that have closed ears and blinders on. And like we spoke of this morning, there's just certain things that I realize our sons are going to have to encounter in order for like a shaking to take place. And they have to realize those decisions that they're making, no matter what I say. They have to go through that, just as I did as a teen or a young adult. And I have to look back and say, wow, I'm there I am with I again, but I have to say, I am glad I actually woke up to realize he was pruning me. That's where I have to pray for my children, no matter how old I get or how old they are. And be that light. And so they're looking and they're watching. And our two oldest sons, they're watching. What does mom and dad do when things get very difficult? Where do they turn? Are they weak for doing that? Or are they being obedient to God? Mm-hmm. And that's where we as women, we have to be there too. You know, there's many times, like Jen and I spoke this morning, the word I or me, and we have to take that out of the equation and let him.
Yeah, and you're right. That is probably the hardest thing we do. I say all the time, having adult children is much harder than having little ones because you have so much more control when they're little. You can really you can navigate and set their feet upon a path. But now when they're gone, that is much difference. But I guess, you know, I really looked at the first part of this, and all I could think of was, is my trust without borders, or do I have borders on my trust? And that's a hard question to sometimes answer, because if I'm really honest with you and I'm real, I would say, well, it might depend on the situation. You know, because there are sometimes clearly I don't respond fully in trust that I think that the Father is going to handle things. But part of that is because, like Tish said, you know, she uses I a lot because I want to see A happen. So is God going to give me what I want and have A happen? And if God doesn't give me A, am I going to be upset with him? How am I going to respond? How am I going to feel? Because and you know, I've heard Charlie say this a million times too, like, we are such a small, microscopic piece to his larger plan. He holds all things, all people, all countries, nations, everything in his hand. And he is running things from a much higher view and from much greater wisdom than any of us could ever hope or imagine to have. And we only see our small piece of the puzzle. But what if our piece has to bring some level of tragedy, or our children have to hit rock bottom, or we have to hit rock bottom, or someone we love has to hit rock bottom in order for his glory to be manifested? And how do we respond to that? And Tish hit it perfectly when she said, am I being a light? Like, what is our testimony in that? Because if we are a living, breathing testimony that this life that we've been given, and I'm going to say given because I don't necessarily think we choose it. The scriptures say that he chose us. Like, we don't get to take credit for where we're at. He, for whatever reason, had mercy on all of us and he chose to open our eyes to the truth that's in his word, not because we deserved it. As a matter of fact, last week's Torah portion said something like that. It's like, or no, I was reading it in was it in Psalms or Proverbs? But it's like, not by our righteousness did this happen, but only by your righteousness. And that's where we sit. But these are things I think this Torah portion talks about. So as Moses is going in here and he is really reiterating and he's talking about all the things that the parents went through. And here are these kids who were probably, it was 40 years ago. So maybe they're 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, maybe up to age 15, and they watched their parents experience all of this. And now they're grown up. They maybe didn't have the best testimony of their parents. Did you think about that? Like, their parents disobeyed God constantly, and God continually had mercy on Israelites because of his promise to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that there would always remain a remnant, that he would see his people through to the end. But the people continually rebelled. Well, guess who is the remnant right now? If you're here, raise your hand, right? You are part of that remnant that he is keeping alive, that's holding true to his covenant, and you're going to be a light no matter what circumstances come your way, because that's what we're told to do. And if we trust him completely and we believe he is sovereign, and we believe that he will bring us through all of the things, then we receive shalom, which is what we all long for, right? We all want his shalom. We all want to be in a peaceful place that says, you know what? I can rejoice in all trials, tribulations, everything. I can rejoice when something bad comes my way, because you know what? I know what the end is. And so despite my circumstances, I can praise his name. I can lift his name. I can glorify him. I can tell people he is love and he is good, even when things hit me hard. And ladies, we're going into the fall season. We've got these 7 Sabbaths of consolation. We've got stuff going on in the spirit realm that is scary. It's downright terrifying. But you know what? We don't come from a place of fear. Let's actually quickly, I want to turn to Joshua 1:8, because Joshua was listening. We opened the book of Joshua. Okay, it's not that far away. Why am I struggling to find it? And okay, 5:1. And he says, he's in the land now, and he's got these people around him, and he just listened to everything Moses said. And he says, do not let this book of the Torah depart from your mouth. You shall meditate on it day and night, and guard to do what all that's written in it, for then you shall make your way prosperous and act wisely. So no matter what's happening, he went in and he's like, listen, this is the promise, and this is what we're going to do. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and be courageous. Do not be afraid, and do not be discouraged. For Yah, your Elohim, is with you wherever you go. I'm going to transition quickly into Gail's Haftarah teaching. If you haven't listened to it, I only got through half of it today, but she speaks to this. Do you feel that he has left you ever? Have you felt that? Have you felt like he has abandoned you? He has left you? He's not listening? He doesn't care about your situation? Because our Haftarah reading in Isaiah, is it 49? I don't remember. 49, Marcia? Or Tish or Katrina? I think it's 49. Says
49.
49.
Yes.
Thank you. It says it's impossible for him to forget us. His nature won't allow it. So we're not forgotten, regardless of our situation, no matter where we're at, what we're struggling with, the family members that we've had to let go of, the bridges maybe we've had to burn, all of that. We are not forgotten. And so my belief is, and this is not necessarily a belief of the Portion Rooted Cafe, maybe it is, maybe it's not, but I'm just speaking as Jen Zuby. We're in the end times. This is it. Last generation, final show. I could totally be wrong, but I'm living like it is. I want to speak like it is. I want to talk like it is. Because if it is, I want to share with as many people as possible. But if it's true, we've seen nothing yet compared to what we've seen the last 2 years. And it's only going to elevate, because the enemy will know his time is short. And so if we don't have that complete level of trust to know that if we're walking in his commands, we are protection. Read Psalm 91, ladies. Read it, read it, read it. We are under his wing. No plague can come near us. Nothing can come within our tent. We are under his authority, and we are safe. We are marked safe, right? So anyway, I'm going to stop and give you ladies an opportunity. Marcia, why don't you unmute for a minute and maybe just offer some additional context or commentary?
Yeah, well, what I was thinking earlier when we were talking about the foot, and Erica jumped in and said some things too. I can't remember exactly. Can you see what she said in there? Something about the heel. But the name of our Torah portion, Ekev, it does mean because, but it's also the root
Heel.
of Jacob's name, heel. And so the only thing that's missing is the yod, which is the hand. And, you know, it's not, I mean, with Jacob, you know, he had a hold of the heel, but we know Esau was red and hairy like a beast. So it's kind of like symbolizing us conquering this beast nature that we have, and allowing, you know, the Ruach to be our head and to rule our lives. And then the more that we walk in him, the more, you know, the beautiful are the feet that bring the good news, right? And so that's just one of the things that I thought was really interesting in what we were talking about, that I had been thinking about. And even like in Colossians 3:5, where it says,
Yeah.
you know, the members of your body, you know, be dead to immorality and passion and evil desires. And so I think that when we, you know, when we have those feelings that you're talking about, where we feel like we're abandoned and left alone, you know, it is important that we form relationships and congregation, and not to, you know, and to reach out to each other, because, you know, those feelings that we're feeling are real, but it's what we do, what we allow those feelings to do to us. If it doesn't line up with the word and who he says he is and how he loves us and adores us, then it's trash, and it needs to go in the garbage. And then we just need to, you know, uplift each other, and because his truth is truth, right? And so, and we don't go by feelings. We have to surrender those. We have to surrender them and stick to his promises, and trust in him. You know, faith is the substance of things not seen, you know. So anyways,
Yes,
my little, I'm sorry, what?
you made me think of something, and I'm trying to find where it is in here, but when it talks about, so when you're talking about like, okay, so I'm going to segue into kind of the next topic then. So we have, you know, the beginning of this Torah portion is really reminding us that we have to hold fast and have complete trust. And yeah, we can't only have partial trust or only trust in certain areas. But the other thing is, as Marcia kind of nicely segued in, is how do we respond to other people? And, you know, I'm talking about children because, you know, my daughter just moved to Colorado, and there's just all kinds of emotions I have with her being 16 hours from home. And I know Marcia struggled with her kids, and Tish was mentioning it this morning. So, but this can be anything, but, you know, we're talking about kids, but we have to entrust that he is going to be faithful in things that we cannot tangibly see or feel. And I agree with what Marcia said, that this isn't about emotion, because emotion, I mean, our reaction is typically something that's going to come from the flesh. And we're going to be reactive, and we're going to, you know, fear and doubt and, you know, lack of faith can come into play in some of those areas. And we have to make sure that we resist that and remind ourselves that we are not to fear, and we are not to be discouraged or dismayed, because he's made us a promise, and he's a promise keeper. But the other thing that hit me then is I'm just thinking about like our testimony, and how even if the world starts to crash and burn, which I mean, I just think part of our job here is to just have these conversations. Like, if we've seen nothing yet through all of the last 2 years, everything that's happened, and it's just a preparatory step for whatever comes next, how are we going to respond to other people? Now, I'm not going to talk necessarily about our kids, but I was on a friend's Facebook page today, and it's the first time she's openly posted about Torah. And the very first comment that came in was just the enemy, the language, the wording, all of it was just pure wicked, as he basically told her that she is in the flesh and she does not have a relationship with the Father because she's trying to achieve grace through the law. He didn't know what he was talking about. Anyway, but I was waiting to see how she was going to respond, because one of the things that's going to happen is as the Father continues to separate us and he draws us more and more in, and he opens our eyes to more things, and the power of the Ruach flows out. He pours out that Holy Spirit and our eyes start opening to things. We are going to get distinctly more separate from the world. And what we saw is in this parsha is the reminder of the golden calf story. And Aaron, you know, God was not pleased with Aaron. He was pretty hot about what Aaron was doing. He told Moses, you get down there and you straighten it out, because they have already, it's been 40 days and they've already forgotten me. It's basically been a month, and they've made this calf and stuff. But Moses's response, if you go back and read the full story, was he prayed before them, and I fell down before Yah. For 40 days and 40 nights, I did not eat, I did not drink, because of all your sins, which you committed in doing evil in the eyes of Yah to provoke him. He dropped to his knees and he just prayed, and he asked the Holy One to not destroy them. So ladies, here's a challenge that I think we're going to have if we don't already have it. We can get like this with people about our beliefs. A huge part of our testimony is to continue to love them and pour into them, regardless of the negativity and the venom that they slay at us. I don't care if it's your children. If your children don't like what you're doing and they're telling everyone their mother's a nut or whatever, like, doesn't matter. If it's your parent, if it's, you know, your neighbors, if it's your best friend, if it's your siblings, it doesn't matter. They're probably going to come at you in a very negative way, but you have one job. If you really trust that what you're doing is the right thing, and you are honoring his commandments, and you are living like Yeshua. I mean, okay, I was thinking about this earlier, like Yeshua did flip a table, right? Like he had a few moments where he was like, but how often did he verbally start going after people in such a way that it put his light out to others? So when we think about that, and we're thinking about what Moses's response was when God's like, these people, you know, Moses just prayed like, I'm on my knees, Father, please do not destroy them, because if you destroy them, what will the people say about you keeping your promises, right? And of course, God didn't forget his promise, and he had every intention of fulfilling that promise. But it really made me think about, what is my heart towards people when they start wanting to slay me with the negativity and the bitterness? What is my heart posture towards them? Can I still smile and love them no matter what? Can I be in front of someone that speaks evil about me or to me publicly? And can I continue to smile and love them? And do I pray for those people? Yeshua said, and pray for those who persecute you. Pray for them. They don't know what they're doing. They don't understand. They have not been giving the knowledge and wisdom that you've been given. And, you know, Robin and I talk about this all the time, because sometimes we get frustrated with family. And we have to stop and say, we didn't do anything to deserve that he's shown us things, but they clearly cannot see it. So the venom that's being spewed is a lack of understanding. And Robin had a word today. What was her word today, Marcia? I almost have to pull up her TikTok. I can't remember.
I don't know. I didn't see
Oh,
it.
what was her word? Robin, if you're on here, put your word. It wasn't ignorance, but it was something like that. Like, they just don't know. Like, people are going to slay at you because of their own fear that if you're right, they're wrong. And so just thinking through that and just being reminded that we need to be praying for the broken around us. We literally need to be praying for the broken that are around us. That is so important. And we pray a lot of times, and I have to be honest, I don't do this very often. I just don't. It's not intentional that I don't pray for them, but there are times I just don't. Tish, Marcia, you guys have any thoughts on that? Any of that little segment that I've shared?
Yeah, I think that that's happening with a lot of us right now, but there's a narrowing and a squeezing, compared to what you were saying, that there's, this is it, kind of like I'm living like this is it. This is the last generation. And I think that many of us are feeling like this narrowing and intention, being, purposefully intentional to follow the way, the truth, and the life, right? And so when we do get these kind of attacks, it's okay if you're still feeling, if like you feel a little prick or a pain, but we need to turn that thing around as quickly as possible and pray for our enemies, because he tells us to do that. And just leave it at his feet and trust in the process. And I think that the more that we, I know the more that we learn those concepts, the more that we apply those concepts, the evidence that we're walking in the commandments and what he tells us to do is our hearts being circumcised, right?
Yeah.
And then he tells us that they will see wisdom and understanding in us because we're walking in the truth. And so I mean, we don't always have to be trying to shove Torah down people's throat. It's just walking in the truth and doing what is right, that will demonstrate, the wisdom and understanding that we have, that will draw them in, for the most part. It might take a while. It's not our timing,
Right.
So
It reminds me of the little song, put your light under a bushel. No, I'm going to let it shine.
yes, yeah,
And it's like, we don't want to have a bushel over it. It's called a light for a reason. It draws people to it naturally.
right.
God's
Yeah.
beautiful design of his word will draw people in naturally if we are just living the life that he desires for us. There's a reason why it says the Torah brings life and brings it abundantly. It is a lamp unto your path and a light unto your feet.
Yes.
It's not just for us that it's everyone. So people will naturally be drawn to the light if we can go through difficult situations and we can be like, you know what, I'm not stressing, I am trusting. And I did have a little bit of this. So my daughter did this 3-month journey mostly by herself. She's 25. She took off, mostly slept in her car, national parks, really deep backwoods camping, and everybody was freaking out. How can you let her go for 3 months? You won't know where she is. She won't have reception. And I think that was one of the greatest blessings is, I prayed when Maddie, well, first when she told me, I'm going to be honest, I completely freaked out. I was yelling at her like, what are you thinking? Are you crazy? You can't go do that. And then instantly it was like, that's the flesh. Do you trust that your Abba, your creator, the one who loves you and desires to give you all good things, is going to send your daughter out there for destruction? Like, trust that whatever happens to her is within his authority and within his will. And instantly I felt a peace come over me. Like, okay, I don't have to worry about it. And not to say that everything always has to be good. There's tragedies with our children. Like, I'm not minimizing that. But we just have to trust that whatever his decision is for whatever reason is right. So I would say, if something were to happen to her on the road, my God is still good, but I'm not going to sit here for 3 months every day and panic over it. I'm just not going to I can't let myself do that. That's not my light. My light is saying, I trust him no matter what. And I'm going to be praying for her every single day that he gets her through what she needs to do and that he's going to bring her back and she's going to be transformed more into his image than she was when she left. And if that means that something has to happen, then I guess something has to happen. And as a parent, you might be like, what kind of a prayer is that for a mom? But you know what? It's Isaac on the altar. I mean, that's what it is, right? Are you willing to lay your kids down or anything else that you have because you trust him enough to know whatever he brings to fruition is for his glory? It's a, like I said, he's got the 20,000 foot view. You don't, I don't. I have this little tiny view in Jen's world. It's like a microscopic piece of the whole puzzle. That's all I get to see. I don't get to see all the other parts and pieces that are being orchestrated that might be impacted by my light or by Marcia's light or by Tisha's light or anyone else's light. We don't know. So that whole trust has to come in. So, okay, so I wrote down love the stranger as kind of a theme for this portion. How do we love others? And we kind of talked about that. I wrote down one source for all things. Ladies, there's one source for all things. Every blessing, everything we have, every detail that happens, there is one source. Nothing happens without his permission. Nothing happens outside of his authority. And I want us to be, as things may or may not, I mean, I believe they may get crazier in the next year or two or whatever, you know, and he continues to separate the wheat and the tares, and things are happening, and we're kind of seeing that we are distinctly set apart from the world, that we can walk in so much confidence and trust because we know that he loves us so much and that his promises are true and that he is going to be that covering, the pillar of cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night, that he's going to guide us to the land. That's his promise. He's going to guide us to the land. So the fear that the enemy is going to want to pour on us in all these situations, we need to say no to the fear. And my mom asked me the other day, well, you're never afraid? I'm like, well, to me, there's a couple different kinds of fear. I obviously, if something happened to, you know, a family member, a child or whatever, or there was some sort of, I don't know, war or something around me, I momentarily would be like, okay, how am I going to respond? But it's not the same as being paralyzed by it or allowing it to dictate my actions. I'm sure that some of these people, when they went into war, they were like, whew, this is going to be a tough battle. You know, like, man, I'm feeling a little shaky at the moment, right? I'm thinking, you know, did Caleb and Joshua feel that way when they went into spy out the land? They came back and they gave a good report because they trusted. But did that mean the whole time they were over there, they were not like, holy cow, those giants are huge, you know? The scriptures don't speak to that specifically, but they might have thought that a little bit. But they stayed the course. That was the whole thing. They stayed the course and they came back and they gave the report that was the testimony of their life. And that spoke to the other people because the other ones came back with an opposite testimony that wasn't a light. And it made their God look small. It made the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob look small. And he is not small. And so that was a bad report because there was no light in their report. What's our report? What are we going to give as a report? What is it? 2 greatest commandments. Matthew 22. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and might. And love your neighbor as yourself. And all the law and the prophets hang on these 2. We know that when he says he's going to love us, he wants us to keep Torah. He says, if you love me, keep my commands. Love is in his words. His love language is his words, right? Words of affirmation, people. He's probably got all the 5 love languages, but words of affirmation is how our Father rolls. And so I was thinking about that, and I'm like, you know, a lot of it's about loving him, but it's about loving the stranger. And to love the stranger, we have to love Yah, and we have to love his ways. That is how we love the stranger. We're walking in it. We don't have to do anything else. We don't have to agree with them. We don't have to accept the sin. We don't have to celebrate their lifestyles and their choices. We just have to keep walking our path. We need to love his commands. That's how we love others. And we've talked about that before, but to me, that was a huge part of the takeaway today was, in order to love others, I have to love Yah and I have to love his ways. And I have to walk in his ways and I have to be a light, even when things are hard. It doesn't matter. That's a path I cannot veer off of. with every ounce of what I'm capable of doing by his Holy Spirit, with his guidance, with his mercy and his grace, I can do that. I can do all things through my Messiah who strengthens me. I can do it. But apart from him, I can do nothing. And when I'm living in fear, there is a bit of a separation. Marcia, Tish, any comments?
I've heard a lot of teachers recently remind us about stop being scared. So that is definitely something that a lot of the teachers are seeing around, in their communities. And you can see that. You can see that in people who are in faith and who aren't, walk into a gas station or grocery store. There's a lot of fear going on. But I think we're reminded, as you mentioned in the beginning, Jen, that Father will repeat things. He knows us. He knows that we have to hear things several times in order to remember it, understand it, begin to believe it. I use a packet from Bill Bullock for the Parsha studies, and he brought up a great point, as usual. The bookend passage at the end of the Parsha. He has a bookend, right?
Mm-hmm.
The promise with which Parsha Ekev opens is offset perfectly by the passages in which it closes. So how it's opened, it closes, and it kind of pulls it all together and holds it together. The underlined words I have here: safeguard and keep.
Mm-hmm.
Love the Holy One. Walk in all his ways. Cling to him. Drive out all these nations, the Holy One will. Expel the nations, and every area upon which your feet tread shall belong to you. The Holy One, Elohim, will place the fear and dread of you upon the entire area you tread, just as he promised you. And that's Deuteronomy 11, verses 24 through 25. It's just a reminder to us as we need reminding. And going back to the light, I've used this example many times. If you have a little Dixie cup and you take a stick pin and you pop a hole through the bottom of it, and you walk into a dark room, no windows, no light on, shine a flashlight through that little pinprick in that cup will illuminate into that dark room. And I'm reminding myself and to others, be that little light in that very, very dark space, and it will reflect out. People are going to be drawn to you, but people are also going to be away from you. Certain people will be like, whoa, there's something about that person that makes me nervous. And there's others that are going to come. And those are the ones he's sending to us. And those are the ones we need to share with, and we need to shine to.
That is beautiful. And I just want to reiterate something you said, because I did not catch this in my first reading, but we're talking about the heel, and he starts those verses, Tish, with, if you diligently guard all of these commands, by the way, not just some of them,
Right.
Guard all of them in complete unity, which I command you, and love him, to walk in all of his ways and cling to him. And then it goes down and says, no man shall stand against you. Yah, your Elohim has put the dread of you and the fear upon the land in which you tread, and he has spoken to you. And then he says, oh, where was it? It was the heel, the verse about the heel. Where did I thought I was on it? But that's not it. Where was the heel? Oh, I skipped over it. Every place on which the sole of your foot treads is yours. Right? Every
Yes.
place that your heel touches is going to be yours. That is, ladies, that's a mitzvah, right? That's a promise right there. That is, he's saying, listen, this is going to be yours. Do you believe him? Do you trust him? Is he right? Or are you like, oh, that might be for somebody else, but that might not be for me. I mean, sometimes we say that. I feel that way sometimes. Sometimes I get envious of other people's spiritual gifts, or I feel like I'm not as smart as other people, or I don't get things as easy as other people, or I look at circumstances and I'm like, oh, and I used to worry about coveting and that being the one command that really struggled with was, coveting things that other people had. And I actually shared that with someone at Unleavened Bread this year, and she was wonderful because she said to me, it's not coveting when you desire to have more of him. Because everything I was wanting was, I want to know him more. I want to be more intimate. I want a deeper understanding. I want to be able to read things and get deeper meaning. I want to. And she's like, it's your love for him that's driving that. So you do see that in other people, but that's not the same as coveting. But for a while, I was really hard on myself because I'm like, I want what everybody else has. But we just need to trust that what he says is true, and that wherever we're at right now, today, whatever you know today is exactly what you're supposed to know today. So if you feel like, well, I'm real, and I used to say this all the time, oh, if I just would have, found Torah when my kids were home and I could have raised them in it, because by the time I got it, they were all out of the house. And I used to just cry out to the Father, like, why didn't you show me this when they were home? And now it's so much harder. And then I had to just stop and say, like, his timing isn't perfect. Like, his timing is perfect. I don't know why. I don't have the 20,000 foot view. I've got my little microcosm, right? That's all I've got. But I trust that whatever the reason was for waiting until this time, it's for my good and his glory. And that's all I really need to know. Right? Marcia, any last thoughts?
Yeah, we're sitting here talking about all these things about keeping the Torah, and we talked about, how it's wisdom and understanding when we're doing our part, but if we going to Isaiah 51, in verse 4, he says, and I think this is where we're at right now. He's like declaring, he's saying, pay attention to me, my people, give ear to me, right? Shema, my
Yes.
nation, for Torah will go out from me. My justice as a light to the peoples, my righteousness is near, my salvation has gone out. Then he kind of talks, sandwiched in between there about, the judgment of the nations, but it ends in verse 7. He says, there's the bookends where what she was talking about. He says, listen to me, you who know justice, a people with my Torah in their heart. Do not fear the taunt of men, nor be dismayed at their insults. And it's kind of what we've been talking about. We talked about a lot of stuff tonight about, when people come against us, how we're going to handle it, being afraid. And basically it just comes down to, the trusting in him and keeping his ways and staying in those paths of righteousness. It's not because of anything we're doing. It's because he's transforming who we are when we're obedient to him, right? And that's what transforms us. And we just have to be obedient to the process, submit to the process.
Yes.
So that's just the last thought that I had with that.
Okay, I can only see part of Brenda's message. For some reason, my messenger is either letting me see the top half or the bottom half.
Let me see if I can see it.
But I want to read it, and I'm not actually sure who Rhonda is, but Rhonda, I love your comments. I'm going to read it out loud for everybody. We were talking about, people who come at us or whatever. I think that's probably when she was talking about it, but she said words of disbelief from those close to our heart can be destructive upon hearing them. Both themes of this month, but rejecting these false hearing is, and then I can't see the rest of it. Strength.
It says, rejecting these false hearings is a strengthening, a rebuilding of our faith, and that is comforting. Shamar is to guard this month. It's part of this month. I can't think of the name of what they call it, Erica. Sorry. I have been tested by opportunities to guard my hearing, which ultimately protects my heart. Yeah.
Thank you, Rhonda. That was really good.
That's beautiful.
Okay, so we're almost out of time, but I already kind of talked a little bit about Gail's Haftarah teaching, but I want to talk about her Parsha point as well. And Marcia, I think you'll definitely have some thoughts on this, and Erica, also feel free to unmute if you want to add into this. But Gail, I always tell her every Torah portion I talk about her where I facilitate, because she is, to me, just one of the most brilliant minds. Like, she's coming out with a book and I just cannot wait. I cannot wait to get my hands on her book. But anyway, Gail is our resident expert on the ancient Near Eastern context of everything. So we know that we study the scriptures. If we don't have the context of the culture, well, that's basically kind of what a lot of the church has done, is they just make it up, and we need to understand what was it like back then, the culture, so we can understand why they use the language they use. But anyway, she was talking about this Parsha being, and I'm doing like the really quick 30-second snippet of it. Go listen to it. It's really good. But the 30-second snippet is, Moses is rehashing some of the battles that they've had, and they're kind of going through some of the things. And in her Parsha talked a lot about when they went to war back then in these times, in the biblical times, they always wanted approval of the gods. Okay, they didn't go to war unless they went to the gods and sought out the gods' permission. I don't know if it was like the weather gods, the war gods, all of the gods of the land. Like, it could have been any sort of false god or whatever. But she kind of then went into, and I'm trying not to give the whole thing, but then she went into what is the meaning of the word tov. And what is the meaning of the word good? Because she said back then, when you read that something is good and it was tov, it is not the same definition of what we think of when we say something is good. Tov back then was about order. It was good if it had order. And she actually had a different definition of tov, meaning it is well formed or with purpose. And so our modern definition of good is an absence or physical or mental pain. Evil is seen as any type of human suffering, or that happiness, our own happiness, is central to what's good, right? And I have friends that say this all the time. Well, why doesn't God want me to be happy? I'm like, did you ever see in scripture where God says he's concerned about our happiness? Not his priority. Not that he doesn't want us to have good things. He wants us to have peace and joy. Joy to me is different than happiness. But if he's got to put you through some stuff to get you right, sister, he's going to do that, because he's more concerned about your salvation and your righteousness than he is your earthly happiness. But she said military conquests were considered tov, right? Well, we could read that in our own context and say, well, why was it good that a bunch of people had to die? But the idea of it being tov was that it brought back order, because God's word is order. His ways are order. His law is order. And so it was good for that. And so other things that maintain order, she mentioned, were like fidelity in marriage, respect of property, aversion to bad things like murder, stealing, etc. But I guess I wanted to kind of bring this out because I was thinking about this in the portion that when we have conflict with people in the world and we're doing this with them maybe, and we're debating and they're coming at us because we've lost our salvation because we're trying to earn it and all this stuff, or they're, threshing stuff at us, and our whole goal is we're trying to be a light. I was just thinking, like, we have to remember tov. We have to remember that we are to be well-formed and with purpose. Like, that should be a goal. We are to be well-formed and with purpose, and we are intentional. We are people of order because God's law gives us order. It tells us good from bad. I mean, God would not agree that if there's any human suffering, that it's always bad, because we're told to rejoice in our trials, right? So that makes no sense. Why would we rejoice if it's bad? But it always has a higher purpose. And so regardless of what comes at us, I just want us to focus on the fact that when I think of tov now, and I think of things being good, it's God's good. And God's good is order, and God's good is intentional, and God's good is the opposite of chaos. It's the opposite of fear. It's the opposite of almost anything that the world stands for. And so as we distinctly get set apart and we can see that more and more, I just want us to be cognizant of, again, our response, our light, our witness needs to be tov. Okay, Katrina said tov. Good also means something functions perfectly in the way it was designed to. Thank you. And I think Erica also had a comment. So I'm gonna, ladies, any last comments before we close? Erica says, Tet Vav Beit, surrounding and inside. This means the outside and the inside are the same. No deception. That was part of the month of Av too. Hey, Erica, actually, you may not be camera ready. You don't have to be. You can just be voice ready. Can you give us just a snippet of Av, since this month is really quite significant, please? Would you mind?
Av is the meaning is it's like father, like Abba. That's where it comes from. And because we switch from the destruction from the 9th of Av into these 3 weeks, the Haftarahs are all about comfort. So it's the Menahem Av, which is the comforting father, comforting Av. But we talk a lot about, because Tet is the letter for the month. So that's why these things came up about Tov and what does it mean to be Tov, and so the part that I wrote about the surrounding and inside came from Frank Seekin's book on the Paleo Hebrew and word pictures. So that's where I got that word picture there for that. But yeah, but that whole idea of the comforting the waste places and that being part of our Torah portion this week, which actually when I first read it was in the Scarlet Harlot book.
Oh,
And so I was going through there and I'm like so behind, and I just happened behind, caught a video from like the 2 weeks prior that I was supposed to be listening to, and I'm reading through the workbook, and that was the verse. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's the Av verse, that he brings comfort to the waste places, because the gate that's associated is the dung gate.
yeah.
So that's where our waste and our refuse go out, because that's what has to happen. We're in these months, we're leading up to our 7th month. So we're leading up in preparation. And so the month we're getting ready to go into is like one is my favorite. The 6th month is my favorite. And I just I can't wait, because it's more of that lavish comfort that the king who's in the field is going to give us. And I'm just super excited. So be there next Monday.
Yes, plug for her new moon call if you don't normally watch those. Tish, do you have any last minute thoughts at all that you want to share quickly? We've got about 3 minutes left. I'll give you a minute and a half and Marcia a minute and a half.
Marcia can have my minute and a half. I don't have
Oh.
anything else, but
Okay.
this has been great.
So
Thank
glad
you.
joined us. You got anything, Marcia? You don't have to, but if you have any last minute
Yeah,
thoughts.
no, I just liked what you were talking about with Tove and everything, and just to encapsulate that. The first time that it's mentioned is in Genesis, and it's in relate to the light, and the light pushed back that chaos so that it could bring life. And then
Yes.
so everything that we even see, that the demonstration or the description of that he tells us that the Torah is, it's light, it's justice, it's righteous, everything that's in that light, it is in the Torah, and so when we're walking in the Torah, that's where we get our righteousness, and that's where justice comes from too. So it's really kind of cool to see all those connections together with the war and Tove. I really liked that. So that's all I
Yeah.
really had to say, is just the first mention of good was
That's
in
awesome. Thank you
reference
for
to
that.
the
'Cause
light.
you're right. The light did push back the darkness. It pushed back the chaos, right? And that's what we want to do. I mean, that to me, I feel like I didn't have that as part of what I was going to talk about tonight, but I feel like that's what the Ruach brought forth is no matter what happens, we are to be that light, and we're going to get a lot of pushback, but it doesn't matter. So you saying that was just like confirmation, like that's exactly what I'm feeling is like that light. Not only that, but we don't have to work to push it back. If we just are that light, it will automatically push back the darkness from us. And Tish read that verse, and that's the same thing. Like no man shall stand against you, right?
Right.
He's going to push back all of those people who are coming against you if you walk in your way. So that's our common theme for tonight, that Tish and Marcia and I all brought our own little flair to, is that if we continue to be a light, even in the darkness, if things grow dark, and our only goal isn't to fight back or to respond in flesh, but our response is to be Tov, right?
Yeah.
We just want to bring order. Naturally doing that, it is going to push back the darkness. And we need more people doing that. So ladies, this is you. This is like my charge to you, is make sure that that's your light. And remember that Revelation 14:12 says, those who endure to the end will be the ones that are holding out of the commands and have the testimony of Yeshua, meaning you're walking like he walked. You're keeping Torah. You are that light. That's what's going to cause us to be able to endure anything that comes our way, any challenge, any difficult circumstance, anything that the enemy throws at us. Our protection is his word. Our
Amen.
protection is the covenant relationship. That's what our protection is. So we want to trust in that no matter what. Trust without limits. There are no limits to what he can do for us and through us. So let's continue to be a light. Okay, we have to go because Charlie wanted to keep it to an hour, but I have a very hard time doing that. I just want to keep talking to you guys all night long.
No, we just love each other.
I know. Well, I hope that you were edified. I hope that the Father spoke to you through this. Maybe you got something completely different. That's all good. That's between you and him. We're going to do a quick 15-20 minute after party. If you're on Facebook and you want to come join us, Katrina, if you wouldn't mind going to Facebook and putting the Zoom link for people to join. If you have comments, we would love to see you in the after party. And again, we're just going to go 15-20 minutes. It won't be too long, but just enough to say hi. This is how I do my after parties. I want to give testimonies and prayer requests, and that's what we do. And last week, when Robin and I taught for Charlie, we spent most of the time praying for people who were vulnerable enough to share things that were happening. And that's what we want to do for you. If you want to be prayed over, if you just want to share a testimony and encourage other women, then pop on over to the after party and be a light in that space. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. We love you. We appreciate you. And have a wonderful prep day tomorrow, and Shabbat Shalom to all of you for the weekend. Bye-bye.
Shalom,
Bye,
love
ladies.
you.